What would you do if you woke up on a spaceship and had no memory of how you got there? Let's talk about it. I read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and it's incredible. So I just want to give a quick spoiler-free recap, and then we're going to get right into spoilers because I got a lot to talk about with this book. So Project Hail Mary is a really hard sci-fi novel. It has a lot of really dense science in it, but it's delivered in a way that is really palatable and understandable, and it stops just short of you having to actually know about science for you to understand it. It's a first-person POV of our protagonist, whose name is Ryland Grace. And Ryland wakes up on a spaceship with no memory of how he got there or what's going on. As he explores the ship and slowly kind of regains his memory and comes back from this amnesia state that he's in, he realizes that he's on a critical mission to save the world. The stakes are so high that if he fails, all of humanity is going to be lost. And not just all of humanity, but possibly all of life across the entire universe. Earth is facing a mysterious and rapidly escalating global crisis, and this mission is basically the last hope for humanity. So Ryland Grace is a middle school science teacher that has to use his knowledge of science and creative problem solving to solve really complex problems under extreme pressure. And during his journey, he makes a really unexpected discovery that changes the course of the mission and forces him to reconsider his goals. He has to adapt to alien environments, overcome moral dilemmas, and make life-altering decisions with limited resources. So at its core, this story is about complex problem solving, survival, cooperation, and it has a really strong focus on science and the power of friendship. And this is why I love this book so much, is because of this friendship aspect. It was really moving and touching to me, and it was delivered in a way that at one point had my stomach churning with regret and anguish, and then at another point, like right after, I was jumping for joy and ecstatic, and it was just an incredible ride. So I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I've said this before, I'm a new reader, so my star rating is kind of junk. It's all over the place. You may not find this book a 5 stars, but I thought it was incredible. The story was told in such a compassionate and a really amazing way. The characters were really unique, and I thought they built this deep friendship in such a unique way as well. Through this whole book, I just could not put it down. It was such a page turner for me, and this was a more clear 5-star than Dungeon Crawler Carl. And if you know anything about my thoughts on Dungeon Crawler Carl, I gave that book 1 rave reviews. I'm in the middle of reading book 2 right now, but I thought that book was incredible, and I actually enjoyed this book a little bit more. If I had to reread one, I would reread Project Hail Mary. And that really says something because I really love Dungeon Crawler Carl. All right, so let's jump into spoilers. So Grace wakes up on this spaceship. He's disoriented. He has no memory of who he is or why he's there or what's going on. He basically has full-on amnesia. So he's exploring the spaceship and he finds 2 other crewmates that have passed away in their sleeping quarters. Right away, we're struck with one mystery, how did these people die? How did his crewmates die? How did he get into this spaceship? What's going on? And the way that he discovers that he's in a spaceship is he's looking around and it just looks like a room, and he looks out the window and he sees the sun. But he quickly realizes it's not his sun. That's not the sun of Earth. That's a different sun. So he's not even near Earth. He's nowhere near Earth. So how the heck did he get here? So right at the beginning, this book pops off in such a thrilling way that had me reeled in. So as his memory returns in kind of fragmented segments, he realizes that he's a middle school science teacher, and he was recruited for a last-ditch effort to save Earth and humanity from a global catastrophe. It's really unique in the way that this amnesia, the memory fragments are returned. They're basically done in flashbacks. There will be one scene where he's on the spaceship trying to figure out what's going on, and then it'll cut to a flashback of him on Earth. he's like with scientists or in a science lab or doing some kind of science experiment, or he's in his classroom or something like that, the way he starts remembering who he is and why he's in this spaceship is through these amnesia flashbacks. And it's also done through some like random chunks of knowledge that just come back to him as he's exploring this spaceship. So Earth is facing this existential threat. The sun is losing energy, and they find out that the energy is being lost very rapidly due to this mysterious microorganism called astrophage. Astrophage absorbs the energy of the sun and migrates to Venus to reproduce. And Grace finds out all of this through like scientific experiments during the flashbacks and on the spaceship. And it's very interesting because the way that he finds out that he's a scientist is he just does he does some calculations from the distance to the sun and the size of the sun and whatnot. And he realizes that like, oh shit, this is not Earth's sun that I'm at. And so he kind of figures out that he's a scientist by just like random thoughts that come up in his mind that only a scientist would actually know. Random like calculations and mathematics and whatnot. It's really cool the way that that's delivered in the book. So as he's having these flashbacks and discoveries on the ship, him and another group of scientists determined that astrophage could cause a global ice age within like mere decades, leading to mass extinction of Earth. So a spacecraft called Hail Mary is kind of hastily built by international effort by global scientists across the world. And the purpose of Hail Mary is basically a one-way death sentence. They're doing a mission to this planet called Tau Ceti, which they found actually is not affected by these astrophage. So this is the only sun that they found amongst a group of other suns and dying stars that are being consumed by this astrophage. For some reason, Tau Ceti remains unaffected. And really, it should be affected, because the way that these astrophage work is they consume a star, or they consume the energy of a star, and then they migrate to an off planet to reproduce, and then they kind of spread like a virus or like a fungus to star after star after star. So any star close enough within range, if there's a star next to it that's infected, that star should be infected too. But for some reason, Tau Ceti is not affected. So they're going to build this spaceship to send astronauts to Tau Ceti to figure out why it's not being affected. And Grace was originally supposed to stay on Earth as a scientist and do studies while a group of astronauts go to Tau Ceti on this death mission. But due to a combination of politics, ethics, and circumstance, he ends up being the only viable candidate and is forcibly included in this mission to Tau Ceti. Because the mission is going to take so long to get there, they have to put the astronauts in a coma using a method where you have to have I think it's like a certain strand of DNA, if I remember correctly, where the coma won't kill you. If you don't have this strand of DNA, then the coma is just going to kill you. So there's a very small group of people, especially scientists or astronauts, that they have to select from that have this DNA that will be able to survive the coma. And Grace just so happened to have that DNA. He was forcibly included on the mission after one of the other astronauts, or after a couple of the other astronauts died in a tragedy on Earth, and he was kind of one of the backups. So they kind of forced him to go on this mission, even though he really didn't want to. So after arriving in the Tau Ceti system, Grace wakes up from his coma and finds his crewmates dead. Grace discovers another alien spacecraft at Tau Ceti, and he eventually does make contact with the alien inside that alien spacecraft. This alien is a really intelligent engineer, and he's an alien from a planet called Arid. And these aliens from Arid actually live in the dark. They have no light. When Grace makes contact with this alien, he can only kind of see him in the dark. They kind of connect their spacecrafts and make a tunnel to each other, and he can only see them in the dark. And he looks like this really like scaly, rocky figure. And so he nicknames him Rocky because his skin looks like rock, basically. And once Grace gets a better view of this alien figure, he realizes he's a spider, basically. He looks like a spider, except each of his spider legs at the end of the spider legs, he has like these claw-like hands. So through some very like rudimentary communication with Rocky, he actually finds out that Rocky's species is also dying from astrophage. And that's why Rocky's there too, is because Rocky and his species also found that Tau Ceti was not affected. So they also traveled to Tau Ceti to see what's going on, why it wasn't affected, and to possibly find the cure for their humanity as well. So despite really vast cultural and biological differences, Grace and Rocky actually come up with a method of communication. This was one of my most favorite parts of the book, because the way that they come up with this method of communication is basically all language is just a sound that's associated to an action or a feeling or something, right? We have this thing that we need to describe, and we assign this thing a sound. That's how all languages work, whether it's English, Spanish, French, whatever. So Rocky will make this sound, like let's say that he likes something, and he'll make a sound, and that sound means that he likes it. For instance, if Rocky likes something, he'll say the sound once, and that means like. But if he really, really, really likes something, he'll say the sound 3 times, and it's like, which means he really likes it. And I thought that was just so cool and unique. They have a sound for the word question. So when he's asking a question, there's a sound for the word question. It's really funny because anytime he asks a question, he ends it with the word question to let Grace know that that's a question that he's asking. I'm just making this up off the top of my head. I can't remember a specific question that he asked, but he'll ask like, how fast is the speed of light question? And it's like, how fast is this question? What does this do question? And in a way, it gives Rocky like a really unique character and personality. So I thought it was really cool. And it made it a lot easier to build an emotional connection with this alien figure that we wouldn't typically build an emotional connection with. And in fact, we would probably be scared of this alien creature in most circumstances. So now that we know that they both have the same goal in mind to save their respective planets from catastrophe, they eventually discover this microscopic organism called Talmiba, and they find out that Talmiba can actually consume and eat astrophage. So they quickly realize that this is a potentially unique natural solution to their problem. If Talmiba can actually eat astrophage and Talmiba doesn't affect the sun in any meaningful way, then they can just bring Talmiba back to their respective planets and let it consume all the astrophage, and the problem is solved. So they're running all these tests on Talmiba to see what it can and can't do. And meanwhile, like as they're running these tests, they're talking to each other. They're figuring out each other's likes and dislikes and how each other's like cultures work. They have different methods of eating and sleeping, and it's a really unique take on relationship building. So they're running all these tests on this Talmiba, and they finally come together and engineer a strain of Talmiba that can survive on both of their environments. Earth's atmosphere is mostly oxygen and CO2 based, and Arid's atmosphere is ammonia based. The Iridians actually breathe ammonia, which obviously is poisonous to humans and you would die almost immediately. So they run into one big problem because this Talmiba can eat astrophage. You have to remember the astrophage is eating the power of the sun. And so they're using this astrophage as the fuel for the ships. They're powering the ships not with like jet fuel or rocket ship fuel or whatever. They're powering the spacecrafts with astrophage. They run into this big problem because the Talmiba can eat astrophage, and the Talmiba have actually leaked out and got into their astrophage fuel source. This Talmiba is starting to spread and eat all of the astrophage. And if they don't get it stopped, they're going to be stuck out in space, and they're just going to be stuck out there until they die. So eventually they find the source of the leak and seal the leak and stop the spread of the Talmiba, and they save the astrophage, and they're able to save enough of the astrophage that they can reproduce it to basically refuel their fuel tanks. So along the way, it's also discovered that Rocky and the Iridians have this alloy called xenonite. Xenonite is a special alloy that is not found on Earth, but it's really strong. I think they describe it as like stronger than steel, but not as strong as diamond. And the cool thing about this alloy is it can be kind of made on demand. Think of it like an epoxy where you mix some compounds together and it creates this really strong alloy called xenonite. Rocky has tons of this product on board and he can make xenonite whenever he wants. If he has the specs of a specific part, he can just make that part out of xenonite, kind of like, I thought about it like a 3D printer basically. One of the fuel tanks gets damaged, so they make this fuel tank out of xenonite and do a spacewalk to install it, and then they fill it with astrophage so that Grace can actually get back to Earth instead of this actually being a death mission. And so Rocky and Grace, they kind of start to gather all their things up and they're preparing to kind of go their separate ways. Rocky's going to go back to Arid and save his world, and Grace is going to go back to Earth and save his world. It seems like it's just going to be like a happy ending, right? Wrong. As the two ships are kind of floating off in their separate directions, they're still relatively close to each other, but we have to remember it's space, and so it's massive, right? They're still relatively close to each other when Grace suddenly realizes that, oh shit, the Talmiba actually started leaking again and they're eating the astrophage again. So if this leak continues, he's not going to have any astrophage fuel to make it home. And he finds out that unfortunately, when they did all of the testing and genetic modifying to this Talmiba to make them safe, livable in the respective Earth and Arid environments, that strain of the Talmiba that they invented actually could get out of xenonite. This Talmiba can actually squeeze through the atoms at the molecular level of this xenonite and basically leak out and spread and start eating the astrophage. And this is my favorite part of this story. Once you realize that the xenonite is the source and the cause of this leak, my heart just kind of dropped into my stomach, because the realization is that Rocky's entire ship is made of xenonite. And so if Grace has this leaking problem, then Rocky also has the leaking problem, and Rocky's gonna die too. So Grace has this moral dilemma. Like, do you fix the leak on your ship and make it home? Or do you die trying to make it home, knowing that you have that return probe that's most likely still gonna get there and save humanity? Or do you try to rescue your friend, your new friend that you made in this alien species? They're still close enough together that he could make it back to Rocky's ship and save him. But if he makes it back to Rocky's ship and saves him, then he doesn't have enough fuel to get home anymore. And so does he sacrifice himself to save Rocky, or does he sacrifice himself to try to make it home and save his own home world? This was a really gut-wrenching moral dilemma that he's suddenly come up against. I was just heartbroken, because like, what would I do in that situation? Like, yeah, like I just made this really cool new friend in this alien species. I have my own species that I need to protect as well. But he really didn't have anybody back at home. Like, he didn't have any friends or family. He was just kind of a loner. He knew that this return probe would make it back to Earth, right? So it's, in one aspect, Earth's humanity is going to be saved anyways, even if he never comes back. And what does he have to come back to? Nothing really. If he doesn't go save Rocky, then Rocky's world is going to die. Grace sacrifices his chance to go home, and he stays behind to help Rocky save his species. And if I didn't fucking holler, dude, yes, thank you. I'm so glad he chose to go save Rocky. I immediately went from gut wrench, like heart sunk into my stomach, to ecstatic, jumping for joy, fist pumping in the air. It was incredible. And so the book ends with Grace living amongst the Iridians, and he's teaching. This is amazing. He's teaching their young and living a quiet, peaceful, meaningful life as a respected guest amongst the Iridian people. People? Not people. Species? Spiders? I don't know. Iridians, I guess. This book was incredible. 5 out of 5. It's a must read. It's amazing. I haven't read any of Andy Weir's other books. He has The Martian and then Artemis. I'm definitely going to read at least The Martian. I'm probably going to end up reading both of his other 2 books because I loved Project Hail Mary so much. It was incredible. I think it's a must read. Even if you don't like sci-fi, I think it's a must read because it tells just a heartfelt story of friendship and the bond that you can grow together, even being so different. And I think this world, especially in today's age, we have a lot to learn from these two, this alien and this human that just grow this really tight bond together. They're so different, yet so similar. And I think that message can be relayed across all of humanity right now. We're living in such trying times that I think we all need to just understand that we're just so similar. And I'm going to leave it there, guys. Please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.